Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Navasesha Sunyavadi Pasyati Desatarane Om Agiritamirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Saksvasumilitanjena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Zena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadanti. Mancha Kalpatuvasya Kripa Sindhu Vaja Patitanam Pavinebho Vaisnavebho. We're reading from the 8th chapter of Madhya Lila of Caitanya Caritamrta. This is one of the final sections of Caitanya Caritamrta, where Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is asking questions to Sri Ramananda Roy, and Ramananda Roy is going to answer. There's, I believe, 17 questions. And I think we read the first one. Last time. And it was quite interesting. So we didn't get up to the second one even. And the second one's also quite interesting. I assume all of them will be quite interesting. And we'll hear now the second question that Mahaprabhu is asking Ramananda Roy, and the example given of Ramananda Roy answering the questions of Mahaprabhu is the ocean pouring water, the cloud pouring water on the ocean. Now what does that mean? It's that the cloud gets its water by evaporation from the ocean, and that same water that it's holding, it pours down on its source. So similarly, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is asking questions and Ramananda Roy is responding to those questions, and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is hearing the answers to those questions, but like the ocean is the source of the water that the cloud is pouring, so similarly Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is actually the source of the great transcendental knowledge that Ramananda Roy is expressing to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu, interestingly enough, is very eager to hear it. He's hearing what he himself is inspiring Ramananda Roy to say, and he's very happy to hear that. In fact, not only happy, but inspired to ask more and more questions. So, the second question is this: Kriti Ganam Madhye Jiver Kon Bada Kirti Krishna Bhakta Baliya Yahara Haya Kyati. Out of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Roy, out of all glorious activities, which is the most glorious? In other words, what activity can a person perform that will bring him the most glory? Now, we're not usually, we don't really, those who are in the devotional line, they're not interested in glory. But yet, the activities that a pure devotee performs is naturally brings him glory, even though it's not his interest. What is a devotee's interest? His interest is what is described in this verse, Kirti Ganam Madhye. Jivera Bara Kirti Krishna Bhakta Baliya Haya Kyati. His activity is to glorify the Supreme Lord. That is what he does. That is his happiness. That is his natural constitutional position. And that he does with full enthusiasm, and that makes him glorious. Not that he does it for glory, but the natural outcome of glorifying the Supreme Lord brings one glory, makes one famous glory, fame, kirti. Kyati means reputation, and kirti means glory. So by broadcasting Krishna's glories, by speaking about Krishna, oneself becomes glorious. Another example is given in this regard, is that if you're looking in a mirror, if you want the mirror's reflection to look more and more beautiful, then what do? Shankar's what do you do if you want the mirror reflection to look beautiful?
Make yourself more beautiful.
Yeah. So the self ultimately is Krishna. When you decorate Krishna, when you glorify Krishna, then naturally the reflection, which is ourself, becomes more beautiful. Now, why is this so? Is this just the exclamation of just another religion saying that everyone should follow our path, and if you don't follow this, you're going to go to hell? So the reality is that unfortunately most people are sort of heading in a downward direction. That seems to be the reality of the situation in the world. If you think this is just some religious sentiment, if you're not convinced that the world is going in a very dangerous position, we invite you to read the newspaper, if anyone still reads newspapers. Raise your hand if you've read a newspaper an actual physical newspaper in the last 2 months. 2, okay. 3, 4, okay. Everyone's starting to admit it now. But most people just get their news through the mercy of Google Maharaj. But why do we say that without the glorification of Krishna, that it naturally brings people into a downward spiral in their consciousness? Or another way to phrase the question is, why should we glorify Krishna? Why should we glorify Krishna? So first thing is, when we say Krishna, we don't mean anything other than the supreme aspect of the Absolute Truth. Supreme meaning the aspect of the Absolute Truth that's fully developed. In the Vedanta Sutra, the definition of God is given as Janmad Yasya Yataha, which means He is the source of everything. So it's quite a different definition than the Abrahamic religions give of God, because how do you, in Hindi, for example, what's the translation given for God? God? Yeah. Yes? Or no? Yes? All you Hindi speaking? Yes? Ishwara. So what does Ishwara actually mean? It means the controller. The controller, or you can even expand it to the creator. But it's really the controller. So He who controls everything. But the Absolute Truth, the concept of the Absolute Truth is quite different than the creator or the controller. Because when religious people think of God as the creator or the controller, they're thinking of Him in relationship to the material world. So He's created the material world, and everything that's going on is ultimately under His control. And again, the same point, it has to do with the material world. But if He's the creator of the material world, that implies that He existed before the material world, because the creator has to exist before the creation, otherwise He wouldn't be the creator of it. So what what was he doing? You could say, I almost said, what in the world was he doing that before he created, but he wasn't doing anything in the world because he was the creator of the world. So what was he doing, and where was he doing it, and when was he doing it? If he's the creator of the material world, so he's obviously has an existence prior to the creation. And how long is that existence? Well, of course, that absolute truth is eternal. So, and the material world, by definition, is going to be temporary. It has a beginning and an end. Isn't it interesting to think that the whole material world has an end? Everything that we consider reality isn't actually eternal. Although we tend to think that today is what it is and tomorrow is going to be just like today, and the next day is going to be and next week is going to be, and then things start happening that really shake one's false conception of reality. It doesn't shake reality, but it shakes one's false conception of reality. And there's a psychological term called cognitive disequilibrium, a fancy term that means that your whole concept of life breaks what reality is. It breaks, it shatters. And it's very, very, very disturbing. Very disturbing. And then the challenge is to reorganize your consciousness, and you can't do it just by wanting to do it, to fit in this new concept, this new thing that happened that broke apart your false understanding of what reality is. Does that make any sense? Yes? I know it makes sense to you. Yes? Did it make any sense? Yes. Yes. Yeah, so one question, what a search for a human being, a human being's life is meant to search for what is a reality, what is the actual reality that I can hold on to securely. That's called ashraya in Sanskrit. What can I hold on so securely that it's not going to change and let me down and crumble through the different circumstances that I observe in life or in the world? What is the reality to hold on to? We have so many identities, and our identities are usually based on illusion. So, illusion means something that's not truly real, and in Sanskrit the word for difference between real and not real is two words, asat or asat. Very interesting. In Sanskrit the words asat and sat. Sat means eternal, and asat means temporary. And sat means reality. And asat means illusion, it's temporary. So a very different concept of what reality is. Reality is that which is eternal. So we want to be able to hold on to something eternal. Why? And deal with reality as it is. I mean, illusion is maybe more fun in the short term to hold on to, but because it's illusion, it's not real. It shifts, it changes, and therefore when we try to hold on to it, it's going to cause cognitive disequilibrium at some point. Just like what's the biggest illusion according to the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, Itzakupu?
Think that we are not going to die.
Okay, but we'll just take it to the primal step, is that we're our body. This is me. So I think this is me, and I go through day by day thinking this is me, and then I look in the mirror and I see that me is definitely changing all the time. It's getting older, it's getting wrinkled, the hair that used to be there is not there anymore, etc. Wrinkled, old, this hurts, that hurts. The pride of youth is gone. Prabhupada even once said that an old man can't be proud. Because, why? he didn't give the purport, but we understand what it means, because all the things that we're proud of, they're one by one taken away by time, by the force of time, and time is irreversible. So if we hold on to, and Prabhupada, he said one time that and I'm going to ask you what the meaning of this is, so listen carefully. He said that compared to misidentification with the body, all other intoxications are like salt and pepper. Now think about what that means. Compared to our identification with the body, all other intoxications are like salt and pepper. Now who's going to be? Okay, Gopal moved his left thumb, so that means he's ready to answer. Yes, Gopal.
What's the question?
I can't remember either. I was hoping you'd remember it. No. The question is, what does it mean? Compared to the intoxication of identifying with the body, all other intoxications are like salt and pepper.
I think it means that as when you take intoxications, one almost loses themselves. Identifying with the body means that you lose touch with reality, and it grabs you so strongly.
That's part A. And compared to identification with the body, all other intoxications are like salt and pepper. Okay, we're going to have to go up to the next level. Chakubu.
The greatest intoxication is to think that we're the body.
Yeah, and everything else is just a spice on the main meal, so to speak. The main intoxication. It's a little addition. So, this is identification with the body is an example of something that we consider, that we hold on to as real. I look in the mirror and I say, this is me. But because of that identification and being an illusion about who is actually me, at some point, and as we were saying, the warnings keep on going. I remember Iksaku before he had white hair. and Iksaku remembers Burishan when he had hair. But it's, the warnings are there, but the identification, the illusion, the intoxication is so strong. And then we hold on to it. We hold on to it, and then one day something's hurting, and we just go to the doctor, and they tell us this terrible news, like you have 15 minutes to live, or something like that, and suddenly our whole sense of reality just crumbles. And when our whole sense of reality crumbles, what comes into the heart? Fear, like anything. Disorientation and fear. You could even say, what's one step higher than fear?
Terror.
Terror, that's the word I was thinking of. Terror. One becomes terrified. Filled with terror. Because you have no idea what reality is. Because the illusion has crumbled. So the definition that in the Vedic culture from the Vedanta Sutra, Janmad Yasya Daha, is that everything in existence and in non-existence comes from that Supreme Lord, the Absolute Truth. There is nothing external to the Absolute Truth. And yet, that Absolute Truth, inconceivable to our finite mind, is personal. Now one could say, well, how could something absolute and that everything comes from be personal? But what's the alternative to something being personal? This is an easy one. Gopal. Impersonal. So what does impersonal mean? Without a person, no personality. But what else does it mean? What does it mean to be a person? This is an interesting question too. But on so many, it can be answered on so many different levels. But
To be subjective.
Huh?
To be subjective.
Subjective, to see from a point of view. Yeah, that's an interesting answer. Yeah.
To be responsive and able to reciprocate.
Yeah. So okay. So what did you say again?
To be subjective.
Subjective. So that's and
To be
responsive.
And have emotions.
To have emotions.
Likes and dislikes.
Likes and dislikes.
Existence.
Existence. You have to exist. How do you know you exist?
Because I'm answering you.
How do you know you're answering me? Oh, anyway, never mind. Just put mud in the water. Okay, so all these things. What are these things? Okay, what does it mean to be a person, Muralidhar? What does it mean to be awake? That's another question. That's one reason answer. Very good answer. To be awake. Yes.
Relationships.
Relationships. Conscious.
To have physical body.
To have a physical body. Okay, you got me with that one. How about do you mean a physical body or a spiritual body?
If it's Krishna, it could be physical. But when I say like as a person, me like it's
At this point,
body, yeah.
so you're talking about form, basically. Okay, to have form. But why must a person? Yeah, of course, a person must have form. Yeah. Okay, what's common? Yes.
Mindfulness.
Yes. Mindfulness. That means if my mind is wandering, I'm not a person.
Not a real person.
Wow, we're getting deep now. Okay. But what do all these have in common? What is the concept that all these have in common? These are the dash of a person.
We have the qualities.
Qualities, that was the exact word I was looking for. So a person has qualities, so many different qualities, including form, and an imperson is nirgun, has no qualities. So I've done all this just to make this point. Can something that has qualities come from something that doesn't have qualities? This is to make the point why the absolute truth must be a person. Because if it had no qualities, that would mean that it couldn't have the quality of creating something, right? If it had no qualities, that would include not having if you had the ability to create something, that's a quality. So an imperson can't have qualities. Something that has no qualities, that's what imperson means. Impersonal means no qualities. So it can have the quality to be able to create something with qualities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're not convinced? You want to think through it a little bit? Or you...
I was just thinking about material objects that they have some quality, but they're impersonal, aren't they?
But what can... They have... Yes, they do, but what is their source? The source of something has quality. What is the source of that pillow, for example?
A human being.
Yeah, plants or cotton or something like that.
Yeah, so it comes from something. So the thing and the quality has the plants, etc., has the quality to be able to be transformed into a cushion. So anyway, so the idea is that absolute truth that everything comes from. It's a very interesting aspect that everything comes from it. So naturally, if everything comes from the absolute truth, we see something beautiful in this world. So that beauty must come from the absolute truth. He must possess beauty, but he possesses all beauty and all knowledge and all strength. And gradually, we're defining what Bhagwan is. he who possesses all fortune, all qualities, all, and then from that, when someone possesses all qualities, all beauty, all strength, all wealth, all renunciation, all fame, and all knowledge, those 6 qualities, then he's very attractive. Just like if the most wealthy person, who's the most wealthy person in the world at the moment?
Elon Musk.
Huh?
Elon Musk.
Is he number 2 or number 1 now? Okay. So if Elon Musk walked in right now, who would be, if he walked in right now and sat next to Darren, our minds would be going, we'd make believe we're listening to this, and everyone would be taking, looking at him and thinking, and everyone would be smiling at him and be very nice, and everyone would be nice to him. It's such an interesting thing about people who are very wealthy, they never have to pay for anything. Wherever they go, let me buy you this, let me buy you that. Strange. But so if he was here, everyone would be so nice to him. But what would everyone be thinking? Of course, no one would know what everyone would be thinking. But what would you be thinking? How to get a donation for the temple? Yeah, we'd all be thinking of trying to. How could I extract just a little bit from him? Yes, so the interest on his interest on the interest of the interest of the interest.
1,000 meters of love.
Yeah. Who wouldn't be thinking like that? Say if Elon Musk walked in and everyone, naturally, everywhere, just imagine how difficult it would be for him. Everywhere he goes, everyone smiles at him, buys everything, and everyone is thinking how to get money from him. Just imagine how difficult it is. Now, who wouldn't be thinking like that, if anyone?
Someone question.
Someone who has a personal relationship with him, or has affection on top of it.
Well, go on to be more specific.
Someone who has more money than him.
But we started with the premise that he's the richest person. So that's Krishna, okay. You're so Krishna conscious, Natesh, even with a cold. Just imagine if you didn't have a cold. So who, for example, wouldn't be thinking like that?
The one who doesn't know him.
Huh?
The one who doesn't know him.
The one who doesn't know who he is.
Someone who has more money than him.
Okay.
One
Yes.
who's satisfied. Someone who's attached from money. Money doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh, I'm thinking of something more obvious.
His son.
I was thinking of his mother.
Mother.
She'd be saying, have you had enough to eat? Did you get, you're working too hard. Why don't you take a day off every now and then? Have you had lunch yet? When there's love. So who would you trust more? You, mummy? I mean, of course, some people nowadays don't have great relationships with their mother, but who would you trust more naturally? All the people who are smiling at you? Or someone who really loves you? So that's... Okay, now we're going to take it to the next step. If you had someone who really loved you, that person would never wish any harm for you, and they wouldn't never do anything that wouldn't be for your benefit. They would never hurt you. Someone who really loves you. So that kind of person you trust. They won't exploit you, they won't squeeze you, they'll only be thinking of your welfare. That is the nature of love. So the absolute truth, the source of everything, is a person. And those who really love him, and see him for what he really is, how wonderful he really is, and how kind he is, because he's Naturally, we're kind to those who love us. Of course, Krishna is kind to everyone. But naturally, Krishna, being a person, trusts that person who really loves him, and then he'll show him who he really is. Like when you work, Sham, and you have your job in a company as a engineer. So they know one aspect of you. You go, how do you dress when you wear a suit and tie? Do you have to do that nowadays?
Just a golf shirt and jeans.
Times have changed, yeah. But lawyers, I saw that when lawyers, they still wear those wigs in Australia, you know? Right? Looks strange, doesn't it? But they only know one part of you. A part of you, and there's so many other parts of you they don't know, they have no idea about. And you wouldn't want to, and you generally wouldn't even tell them about those other aspects of you, because it might upset the working relationship. But when there's a person who loves you so much and you trust them completely, then you can really be yourself. That's Vrindavan. The people of Vrindavan love Krishna so much, and they are so concerned with his welfare, they're acting only to please him. That's the nature of love. And on the other hand, Krishna reciprocates with them by acting only to please them, because he's a person. You'd have to be if someone's giving and giving and giving, and you just take and take and take and don't have any affection for that person, you wouldn't be very nice person, what to speak of the supreme person, the supreme all-attractive person. I once saw, I may have mentioned this before, I once saw a cartoon, like one of those, I've seen that kind of cartoon, but you know, the one of the comic one, and it had the perfect concept of many people's concept of God. There was an old man, very old man, with a long beard, long gray hair, in robes, and he was standing in front of a computer screen, or sitting in front of a computer screen, and he was watching this man walking, and the man was walking in front of a building. And right above his head was a piano on a rope. So he's walking, this is what's on the computer screen, and he's watching it, and he's got his finger on the enter button. Just waiting for the fellow to walk on. So that's the controller. Why did this happened? It must be his fault. You know, he pushed the button. This bad thing happened to me. So we want to find a shelter that's beyond the always changing. We want to find a shelter that reciprocates with the trust and affection that we give him. Not that we have to be great, do something wonderful, but there's so much love that we want to love that supreme person. And he's conscious, he's aware, and he reciprocates with that. And it never changes. There's no cognitive disequilibrium where suddenly that falls apart and we have to reorganize our thoughts. So a person, so the verse again was, who out of all glorious activities, which is the most glorious, which person gets the most glory? The person who's actually situated in his relationship with that Supreme Lord, and really loves him and really appreciates him and is really involved in the reciprocation with that Supreme Lord. that person, that Krishna, and reciprocating with him, a life of continuous reciprocation with the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And he's the only one who can reciprocate individually with everyone. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Riddhishe Arjuna Tishtati, that he's in everyone's heart and he can reciprocate with everyone individually. And in fact, not only can he is. He's reciprocating with everyone. And yeah, such an interesting concept. We can never actually be separated from our relationship with Krishna. We can be separated consciously, but not in fact separated. Because it's an eternal relationship. Because he's the absolute truth, all-inclusive. We have an eternal relationship with him, and it's a matter of turning towards it. I love to do this, so I'm going to do it. Just right now, there's one verse in the Caitanya Caritamrta, Krishna Bule Se Jeev, Anadi Bahimuk. So it means forgetting Krishna since time immemorial, turning his back on. Bahimuk means you turn your back on Krishna. Atta eva mayatari, and therefore one is under the control of illusion, turning our back on a relationship with Krishna. We become under the control of illusion, and therefore we have to suffer in the material world, taking one material shelter after another that lets us down. But the word I was interested in this is bahimuk. We turn our back on Krishna. That means we turn our back on our relationship with Krishna. Now, this is one of those teaching moments. Now, how does it feel when someone turns their back on you? And I have my hands folded just to make it. Even though I'm just playing, and you know I'm playing, it doesn't feel good when someone turns their back on you.
Rejection.
Huh?
Rejection.
Yeah, so when we reject Krishna, we're the loser, because we're facing the wall and see only the shadows. We only see shadows. We don't see reality. That's Maya, Samsareda Dukh. So a person who actually faces Krishna, and that means enters into the relationship with that absolute truth, not just theoretically, but actually enters into the relationship. That means action. Relationship means action. It means you have to act in relationship, not just think about acting in relationship, but you're acting in relationship. And what is that? That's devotional service. That's bhakti. And hearing and chanting. Then, as one decorates Krishna, then we become glorious and beautiful. So that was just an introduction. Prabhupada has a long purport here. Yeah. Okay, why don't we stop here and see if there's any questions or comments? Yeah.
What was the question from last week?
From last week, how about this week? And then if there's nothing from this week, then you could ask last week.
Another comment.
Yeah.
For my question. So, we're talking about cognitive disequilibrium.
You like that term?
I like that term.
Have you heard it before?
No.
Okay. You can have it. I can't remember where I got it from, but you can have it, even though it's not mine to give you. But
so he talks about how, in essence, you want to love and have that loving relationship that's not conditional. And the comment is that you mentioned Sean is working as an engineer and they only know him as an engineer, they don't know all his other qualities. That's because they probably can't reciprocate with that. And I think it's because what I've understood is that we live in Australian culture where it's hard for everyone to be in equilibrium with what Indian culture, what we live in, and our values are like. And the analogy I like to look in my mind, and I try to explain to someone, is that imagine if an Australian who's very comfortable in Australian culture was to be put in Saudi Arabia, where that culture is completely different. They would have to automatically adapt and respect the culture. But I found that here it's very challenging for people to respect the culture or this kind of values we have, because it's an Australian culture.
Right. But it's also changing, by the way. I mean, when the first time I came to Australia in 1974, perhaps, it was completely different. There were no brown people. You weren't allowed in, practically speaking.
By law, they weren't allowed in.
There was, yeah.
There was the White Australia policy, and that was it.
Yeah, and sometimes we'd walk down the street in robes, and the people would look at us, and you'd look at all these old ladies looking at you like, what planet did you come from? And you know, crazy. And they're all Methodists and Anglicans, and now they're all Buddhists, all those old ladies. And they look at you so Australia's really changed, actually. Of course, there's still Barbies and footy, but it's changed. The world is changing. See, if you hold, well, this goes to the point I'm just commenting on an aspect of what you said. If you hold on to one aspect or something that this is reality, this is Australia, it's going to change. It's the nature of the material world. And if you think that's Australia, your whole concept is going to fall apart. If that's your sense of reality. Just like, have you ever been to the home in which you grew up in when you were a child? Yeah. And then you go back like 30, 40 years later or something. It's such a peculiar feeling. It's like spooky almost. It's something strange because something's the same, but something's changed, and the thing that's changed is you.
I do have a comment. I don't think you can turn your back on Krishna. It's more a matter of closing your consciousness, you know, because Krishna's there everywhere you are, all the time. But you can close yourself up to everything. But it's actually when you open and expand yourself that you have the ability to sense Krishna, you know.
So you can't, as you said, turn your back on your end your relationship with Krishna. But you can turn your back on it in the sense of not act in the relationship. So in your words, that closes your consciousness, and indeed it does close your consciousness. And just like when you turn your back, when I turned my back on you, I was looking at the wall.
Yeah.
And the wall is, and if you imagine a light behind you as say the sun, and then I just see all of your shadows over here. So when you turn your back on Krishna, or you close your consciousness to your relationship with Krishna, you just see the shadow of existence, not true existence as it is, and that's called Maya. You see the shadow of existence, the reflection. So that's described in more detail in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And what the reflection has, well, shadows have the quality, they don't have the actual substance of life. So we try to enjoy the shadowy realm in the world of Maya as if it had substance, and therefore it's very frustrating. So I'm agreeing with you. Actually, I just sort of transferred what you said into the Hare Krishna terms, sort of. Thank you. Any other? Yes.
I was wondering what was the answer given by Sri Ramananda Rai to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's question.
That person who is reputed to be a devotee of Lord Krishna enjoys the utmost fame and glory. So who is most glorious? The person who is living in their relationship with Krishna. He is most glorious. He's glorious from Krishna's point of view, and he gives them so much, but also from the point of view of in the world even. Like you could say that the most famous people in the world are the greatest of religious teachers, who are the founders of religions and things like that. They're the most famous people. Other people are famous in one country. This person is famous in another area of that country, a state or a province. This person is famous, but those who have given themselves to the Supreme Lord, they end up with the most glory, in fact. Yeah, and Prabhupada again has quite a long purport on this verse. And maybe we'll read it in 6 months, or you can read it anytime you want if you have the books. Yes?
In regards to what Gopal had mentioned, that, for example, an object also has qualities, and you explain that a person, or how we refer to God, is that qualities from a person must come from someone. I feel like the way that we explain God, it's almost like we're trying to find things that are like, oh, see, this proves my point. That's because there's a person. But what about people that don't believe in God? That's not their first. They're not trying to connect everything to a person. But we are, and we're trying to justify that by explaining this.
Well, which is closer to reality?
Of course, a person, because I also believe that.
But okay, you have to take the part of a person who doesn't believe that. So that means we may have to argue a little bit. See, if you have a common authority, like a book, then you argue based on the book. But if there's no common authority, then it goes to logic. Either that, or you can believe what you want, and I'll believe what I want, and time tells. So, do you want to argue? What do we do now?
So then what would be a common ground that...
Well, I was using logic. I was trying to use logic instead of shastric proof. I was trying to use logic that a person has qualities, and imperson by nature can't have qualities. But one time I said that to someone, and they said, how about the wind? The wind has qualities, it isn't a person. And I thought about it for a long time. And I said, that's like the Paramatma. He has certain qualities, but the full manifestation of the personhood isn't there. So what would you say? I was trying to get to the point of how the absolute truth of the source of everything has to be personal. Because how could the source of everything be impersonal? That was the point I was trying to make. Because if it was impersonal, how could it be a source of something? Because that's a quality. And the absolute truth is nirguna, without qualities. Impersonal means nirguna, without qualities. So I was trying to say that at least the absolute truth has to have the quality of creating things. So therefore, once you give one quality, then it will have others. So how the Mayavadis deal with that? They say that, you're waving, or you have a question or a comment?
He's going to have to go soon.
Oh, you're leaving? What time do you leave? Someone's going to Melbourne to go to India, Vrindavan. If I don't end now, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. And also, I'll be quite impersonal. And I don't want to be impersonal, because then, yeah. Raise your hand if you'd like. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes,
I
Gopal.
just had one comment on that conversation. I heard Ridanand Maharaj make the point that it's kind of like what you're saying is something can't come from nothing logically, and if you say so, that's like saying that there's a square circle. The point is that it has to come from something that has qualities to be able to create something, and if that, otherwise it can't come from nothing.
Something can't come from nothing. So the Mayavadis say it's illusion. This world actually isn't here. Try and live like that. This world isn't here, really. It's all an illusion. So as Prabhupada said, that even though they say it's illusion, they're quite expert at enjoying the illusion. That's what happened. That's called the New Age movement. It's all illusion, it's all play, it's all, here's your story. And let's go and have a good time because it's all illusion. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Lalita, where's your mom?